ESP3 and temp stow it on the opposite side of the platform, which will be more clear again on the video for EVA3. So he'll translate that out here, and then he will install that foot restraint on the zenith side of the ESP3. After that's complete, he'll open up a little MLI cover here, which exposes the NTA, or nitrogen tank assembly. He will release the 4 bolts. They're set for launch loads, and he will release torque on those and then reset them within the pistol grip tool's range to speed up the operation on EVA3. He'll also, on the opposite side of that NTA, install a couple of thermal covers over the quick disconnects to keep them from overheating during the translation between ESP3 and S1. While he's doing that, EV2, Ron Garan, is moved to the back side of the truss, and he is going to work on the back side of the NTA on this side. He will open up what we call a shower curtain MLI here. It slides down. The NTA has some nitrogen lines that are connected between it and the ATA, or the ammonia tank assembly, which is immediately to the left there, the large box. So he'll disconnect the nitrogen lines from the ammonia tank and stow them on some dummy ports on the nitrogen tank assembly, and then close up the shroud. He'll also install the same thermal covers over the quick disconnects that EV1 did out at ESP3. The ground will begin venting the lines of the NTA to keep them from overpressurizing during the transfer from S1 to ESP3. On the front side of the truss, EV2 will complete a couple of tasks on the NTA to get it in its final configuration for EVA3. The first of the tasks is the same as what EV1 performed out on ESP3, and that is to break torque on all 4 of the bolts holding this to the truss and then reset them within the limits of the pistol grip tool. And then there are 3 electrical connectors that he will demate and then pull the cables back out of the way and stow them inside of the truss. At the end of this, the NTA is only in place by those 4 bolts that will be removed on EVA3, and then the NTA can be removed from its rails. When he is complete with that, he will translate out to the port side of the truss to join up with EV1, where they will retrieve the final item on this EVA, which is the external television camera group. This is on the far outboard side of P1 on the nadir side. The first thing they'll do is release a bolt and then install a handling aid to give them something to hold onto this thing with. Swing it behind themselves on their body restraint tether, and then they will work their way back to the airlock after they've cleaned up the work site and get this thing in the airlock. And that will complete all of our tasks on EVA2. Well, this is going to be a very robotic-intensive EVA. Ron Garan will be on the station arm for a good chunk of the EVA for the NTA R&R. Because of the distance between the S1 NTA and the spare on ESP3, the crew will have to install what is called a whiff extender along with their foot restraint, and that basically, in effect, is just increasing the reach of the arm so that we can span the gap between these 2 locations. So the crew will set up the arm with that whiff extender and foot restraint, and EV2 will then ingress the APFR and begin to prep the NTA for removal. So Ron will release the 4 bolts that we reset on EVA2 and then install a handling aid to help him during the translation. And then he will, along with the help of the robotic arm operator, pull the NTA out of S1. While he has been completing all that, Mike Fossum has been working his way down to ESP3 on the port side of the vehicle, where he has gotten into the APFR, pulled back the MLI tent, and then he has released the bolts that are holding the NTA in place. He will then pull the NTA out, flip it over, and temp stow it on the opposite side of the ESP3 to get it out of the way so that when Ron gets here with the empty tank, he can install it directly into the housing on ESP3. So we'll see all that here in animation. EV1, Mike Fossum has now moved to the front side or forward face of the ESP3 in order to help guide the NTA into its position. You can see now as we move around that temp stow location for the spare NTA. And now the coordination between Mike Fossum, Ron Garan, and our station arm operator will continue as they install this empty NTA now into the MLI tent. Ron Garan will drive 1 bolt to make sure that the NTA is secured, and then he will remove his handling aid, move it over to the spare NTA. Then he will retrieve that spare NTA and begin moving that back to S1. Mike Fossum will stay behind and clean up the work site, making sure the bolts get all torqued down on the empty NTA. And Ron will get a nice ride on the station arm back to S1. He'll remove his handling aid and secure all of the 4 bolts. And then he's got 3 electrical connectors to go remate to power the nitrogen tank assembly. And then he'll remove all the hardware from the station arm so that it is unencumbered to go about the rest of its tasks. Mike Fossum is going to take the foot restraint that he installed on EVA2 back from ESP3 and translate it back down to the lab. We need to remove this APFR so that the ESP3 can be relocated during the stage. After he's complete with that, he will move his way out to the JPM, where he will begin the task that we outlined earlier. His first task is in reference to the 2 cameras on the robotic arm on the GEM. First one is the WVE, or wrist vision equipment. He'll remove the launch lock and MLI cover, or thermal cover, and stow that in a bag. Then he'll move to the EVE, or elbow vision equipment. It has a similar launch lock and thermal cover that he will remove. The last item here on the end cone is to remove the 3 launch lock bolts from the aft window shutter. And now both of these window shutters can be opened and closed by the crew inside the vehicle as they desire. Mike will then work his way to both sides of the JLP, actually, to deploy these deployable MMOD shields shown here. There's actually a separate handle to deploy each. This is the handle that Mike will access in order to deploy the shield. He'll rotate this handle out, and then it slides along a track down in this picture. And as he slides that down, this MMOD shield actually deploys. And again, that is protecting the mating surface between the JLP and the JPM from any orbital debris. The last thing to do is to close or stow the handle in its locked position, and then close up the door. So while Mike is working on all of that, Ron will be translating back up to the backside of the starboard truss here to connect the nitrogen tank to the ammonia tank. Once again, he's going to open the shower curtain, and then he will disconnect the nitrogen lines from their temp stow location on the NTA, or the nitrogen tank, and then route them over to the ammonia tank. After he's complete with that, he'll close up the shower curtain. He's then going to work his way down to the station airlock, where he will pick up the external television camera group, which was left in the airlock for thermal reasons. He'll pick that up and translate it out to the port side of the truss, again to the far outboard side of P1 on the nadir side, and meet up with Mike Fossum to install this camera. That will complete the end of EVA3 and the end of all of our spacewalks for this mission.